Every 4 years, the United States holds its presidential elections, a pivotal event that captures the world's attention. In 2024, this tradition continues as voters decide between the major candidates, Vice President Kamala Harris, running as the Democratic nominee, and her Republican challenger, Donald Trump, vying for the return to the White House. The election, with its high stakes and far-reaching consequences, is closely watched, not only within the US, but also globally, as it will shape the nation's future policies on the economy, climate change, and international relations, including with the African continent. We are here today coming to you from VOA Studio in Washington, D.C. with very special guests. Curtis Matiti, a master's student in political science at the University of Western Cape, South Africa. Safia Mohammed Iklil, a broadcast journalism student at the University of Media, Arts and Communication Institute of Journalism in Accra, Ghana. Raul Barata, a master's student in international relations and governance at the Catholic University of Mozambique. Hope Niambo, an electrical engineering student at the Technical University of Mombasa, Kenya. Cyril Sena Anani, a broadcast journalism student at the University of Media, Arts and Communication Institute of Journalism in Accra, Ghana. And Helen Malechi, a PhD student in African Studies at Howard University, right here in Washington, D.C. To start this discussion, let's go around and see what everyone thinks of this election so far. Curtis Matiti in South Africa, what are your thoughts on this election so far?
So thank you so much, Myra. So my thoughts on the elections are that, following up on, the election and looking at, the way that they've been talking to the American communities is that we see less and less about how they are talking about African countries. And it's more about what they can do for American people, Well, that is understandable. You need to prioritize your people first. Is that we don't know exactly, their policies, whether they will change or, they will do something different on how they've been approaching African policies. So we don't know where we stand right now. It's like we're in the dark about how Trump will approach, his relations with Africa, and then how Harris will approach her relations with Africa. So the elections, prioritization is more about American people and less about how, it will impact the African relations. So we need to see more of that in their campaigning.
Thank you so much, Curtis. I'm going to go now to Mozambique, where Raul Barata is. And Raul, what are your thoughts?
I think that these elections will come down to the undecided voters because what I can see, what I can analyze and evaluate about this election is that there are voters that are divided between Trump and Kamala. So it will all come down to the undecided voters.
Safia Iklil, you are in Accra, Ghana. How have you been following this election so far?
Well, following the election, you can clearly see that there is actually a narrow gap between Trump and Kamala Harris in terms of reading. In capturing the attention of the youth, Harris was able to actually engage with the youth and especially the Gen Zs very well compared to Trump, even in ads. But basically, all would depend on November 5th election outcomes. Yeah.
Very well. Thank you. We'll keep ourselves in Accra, Ghana. We're going to talk to Cyril Anani now. Cyril, what are your thoughts?
Yes, Myra. So, it's quite interesting how the U.S. elections is quite similar to that of Ghana's upcoming elections, where we've had two people who've been in government, who've served and then want another chance, same as former President John Dramani Mahama and then our current flag bearer of the New Patriotic Party and the Vice President, Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia. It gives a similar feel. So, yes, the election is really tight because we've seen two people who have come before. Just as Trump has been in power as the man in front, I don't know how he is going to convince the people that he can do better, because Kamala has an advantage to, I wasn't the president, I was the vice president. So when I come, I can put what we've done into tangible stuff. But then, like Raul has said, it's more of the undecided voters for that election, because we've had two people who have been there before, and people are, it's just really divided. And I'll take the words of Safia as well. It's a narrow competition, but then it all depends on November 5th, just like we are all waiting for.
Thank you so much. We're going to go now to Kenya. In Mombasa, we have Hope Nyambo. Hope, what are your takes?
Okay, hi. My views about the elections in America, about Donald Trump and Kamala Harris, is that I feel like the votes are kind of divided, and also about the policies, I've not had so much. And I mean, I've not had them talking so much about what they will transform in Africa. It is fine that they are supposed to develop their country, but I've not had them talking more about Africa. Yeah.
Thank you. And I left Helen for the end on purpose, because Helen is here in the US, and I didn't want her take to influence anyone else, since she's not only seeing from the inside, but also as an outsider. Helen, please share with us your thoughts.
Thank you very much, Mara. Yes, actually, I think you're right, because when I used to be in Kenya, I didn't have the same perspective as I have now, that I'm on the ground and hearing what people say on the ground. One thing I've realized is that the Americans really discuss policies, and they drive their voting towards policies, and they're examining those policies, and they want to see what policies will affect them. And in that regard, you find that Kamala Harris has policies that are going down in the sectors of the nation, very different sectors, and she's going down right to the African Americans, and she's breaking down those policies, which may be a plus for her because she's concerned about the people in America. Another thing I'd like to say is that she's a woman. I know that once we had Hillary Clinton vying for the post, but she's a woman, and she's a woman of color. I think that's a very unique scenario for America today, because that has never happened. And when you see that a woman comes in, it will change. It's changing the balance of how power is going to be run in this country. On the other hand, we see Trump coming back to run again. And Trump is very concerned with economic policies, immigration policies. And also, in a sense, there's still the Prosper Africa that he had begun, the trade relations between Africa and the US. So you can see both of them have something that they're talking about that may affect Africa. But I see the way they have approached the elections has been for America and other parts of the world. And like my colleagues are saying, that Africa is not featuring prominently in their agenda, although Africa is a great place because of the way our youth are growing. So I think that in as much as we're going to see this narrow divide and who will win, they'll have to think about how are they going to relate with Africa now, because Africa is in the meanwhile changing as the American politics change. Thank you very much.
Keep the mic on you and ask you in just a few words, how important is this election for you? You mentioned there that we have a woman of color. So how important is it for you now?
All right. I'll speak about it from my context of being an African. And in Africa, right now, our youth are bursting at the seams and they're involved in technology. And when you see that a woman would take power, it also means that youth women will have opportunities. The very fact that Kamala stands as she vies for presidency means a lot for other women around the world. And when you think about Africa, it is enough for us to say that the president of the United States is a woman. So it makes a difference because it opens up doors that were ordinarily shut. So it would be advantageous to us as Africans to see that there's a woman in power. Secondly, when I'm here in Howard University and HBCU, there's a lot of strength that we gain from a woman who is talking about values and policies and caring for the needs of women and how they are on the continent. So that makes a difference for us. So that would be interesting to see and useful to us as Africa.
Thank you.
Thank you very
Cyril,
much.
how important is this election for you?
I will not just say important, but one that a lot of people are looking forward to, because like she says, like Helen said, this is a woman coming in to change things, because we've seen, and I'd like to borrow the words of Safia when she talked about Kamala's policies on immigration. Very, very important, because we are looking at what is going to happen after November 5th with Africans who want to migrate to the US, not to even permanently live there, but then to study and all of that, because we've seen an instance in 2017 where some countries were banned from coming to the US permanently. So yes, this election is actually going to decide whether we're going to see a continuation of something like that or not. So I think it's a very important one, and then one that a lot of Africans are looking forward to see what 2025 is looking like for immigration.
I will ask the same question, to Safia, and in a very, very quick words, how is it important for you?
Well, for me and other youth here in Africa, I'm sure it's only two things: education and then immigration. So immigration in the sense that will we get a chance to easily migrate to the US, those of us who want to work there and live there as well? Will it be easy for us? And then secondly, also in terms of education, will there be more sponsorship for those of us who would like to go and study in the US? Or would there be more exchange programs for those of us who want to go and study in the US? Yeah, basically that's it. Will there be research collaboration? And would there be, more chances? Yeah, that's it. In terms of education and migration.
Very well. Thank you. Curtis, what about you?
So for me, the way that I can say, like Hope has said, that it's not just not for me, but all for us African students here. We're looking for it because these elections are very important. They can impact policy changes towards Africa. So we need to look at how these elections will impact. Based on who wins, whether the Republican or the Democratic Party, that can actually influence the policy changes towards South Africa or even Africa overall. So we're looking at opportunities as economic opportunities like AGOA. AGOA is expiring next year, as we know. So these elections are very important, that the person who comes next year can extend or potentially discontinue AGOA. So they're very important, that we need someone who actually can come in and then actually renew AGOA, so that it cannot actually impact African people and African students, because we're looking for opportunities, economic opportunities, educational opportunities from AGOA. So it's very important that the next person who comes actually looks at multilateral discussions with AGOA and not just prioritize America.
Some of us, including me included, we if you get a chance for scholarship, we will want to go and study in the US. And on how they're affecting us is the incoming administration. It will affect either they will increase our chances or decrease. So because of the scholarships and also the student visas and the immigration, on whether we can travel to the US or not.
Thank you so much, Hope. Raul?
Yeah, I think for me, these elections are important because we will know if, in fact, United States of America will continue this relationship with Africa. Of course, with all the initiatives that there have been happening here in Africa. I'm talking about the aid and the humanitarian aid, of course, and the investments that the United States have been carrying on along these years here in Africa, especially in Mozambique. all kind of initiatives in areas of health and education and governance, and of course, as Ellen said, the fact that Kamala is a woman. If Kamala wins, of course, I think that she will continue with the policies towards, of course, women empowerment. As we know, Kamala last year was in some of African countries. If I'm not mistaken, she was in Kenya and in Tanzania and also in Zambia. And in all of these countries, she stated the importance of strengthening democracy and women empowerment. And I believe that if she wins, of course, and I want to believe and I want to see if she will continue with these policies towards strengthening democracy, of course, strengthening women empowerment.
And I'm going to
That's
keep
how
the
I
mic
see it.
on you for the next question. Also, reminding the audience and our guests, of course, that there were still some initiatives like the Prosper Initiative on under Mr. Trump's administration, and he didn't travel to Africa, but he did send some of his representatives. So it wasn't totally forgotten. The continent wasn't totally forgotten. What are your thoughts on the candidates and their agenda, either regarding not just the continent, but the policies that they would like to put in place that they've been talking about? What are your thoughts?
We see that from the debate that they had, they concentrated the agenda mainly on the on this war that's going on between Russia and Ukraine, and also in the Middle East. So that's what I can take from that debate, that the agenda is mainly Russia-Ukraine war, and of course the Middle East. I'm not saying that the diplomacy towards Africa will somehow stumble or go down, and I'm not saying that, but I believe that they will continue this relationship with Africa, whoever wins it, of course. They will continue this relationship with Africa because strategically Africa is important, not only to the United States but to the world, taking into account the fact that BRICS is now strengthening itself. And I think that the USA will not let this slide, will not let Africa go away, and taken by countries such as Russia or China. So I do believe, of course, that they will continue this relationship with Africa. I think the diplomacy with Africa will continue. Between those initiatives that I just mentioned, the USA is also here supporting some of the very, very important initiatives in Africa. But so, yeah, I believe that they will continue in that way.
Very
but
well, Hope.
It won't change much.
I would like to hear from you.
Okay, I also want to second on what Rol has said, that on their debate, Donald Trump and Kamala Harris, they were stressing more about the war between Ukraine and Russia, which is currently going on. And I think also when because Kamala Harris has been in Africa, I think she will consider more about Africa, and also she will also continue with the diplomatic relations.
I would like to hear from Curtis. Curtis, what are your takes on this point?
Thank you, Myra. So looking at the current policies that they are willing to implement, we look at climate change, we need to move away from coal, fossil fuel, because, as you know, that Africa amounts for a very little, amount of, climate or global warming or amount of fuel. But they've been impacted by this industrialization that is happening all over the world. So we need someone who's going to come in and then clamp on climate change, so that Africa shouldn't get impacted by this climate change and global warming. And we also look at trade. With and it's a very also the policies they differ. We look at Harris' policies on corporation tax. So she wanna increase the tax. Well, Donald Trump wants to cut on the tax. However, that differs from the perspective of both how they see it, because the African investors, particularly let's say South African investors who are willing to invest in South Africa, the corporation tax that carries wants to increase might actually hit those investors, because now they are big corporates and they are not willing to pay for this those big taxes. But then we're looking at Donald Trump also. He wants to cut on these taxes that can be beneficial for the investors who want to invest in South Africa and Africa. And then we're also looking at also Raoul mentioned the battleground between Russia, China, and Africa. I mean, Africa has been used as a battleground, to be honest. When you're looking at the tension between Russia, China, and then USA, and then Africa has been caught in the middle because they are financing Africa, or they're willing to look for allies, anyone in Africa who can actually be friends with USA, China, and Russia. So they're using this African continent as a battleground for their own economic interest, strategic interest. So the policies that I've seen from Trump and Harris is that they are willing to come in, also invest more in Africa, but however, just to get away from just they wanna pull away the influence that Russia and China has. So it doesn't come up from a position where they want to form friends or alliances, just to push away the influence that Russia and China has. So
I think also both of them were talking about agriculture and where they can give rebates or ways in which agriculture can be assisted to do better. So in terms of the American discussion for the context within this land, they are focusing on their people's needs. However, as I see them looking outward, their eyes are toward the Middle East, the Ukraines, and they're looking around the world that way and positioning themselves for the pressures to do with China and that part of the world. But one thing that I'm noticing is that their eyes are not looking toward Africa very much. They are in contact with Africa and have relationships with Africa, but there's a big budding youth population. So most of our population are young. So for their policies, I would like those inclusive policies which would target the youth who are really massive and will be the next generation, because they're big in Africa. In fact, there will be about 2.5 million Africans projected in 25 years, and the median age for Africans is 19. So there's a big population that would be easily work with America in very many different ways. So in as much as the two candidates have really focused on building policies for their nation, I think the inclusiveness is required, because Africa is a place they should be looking at, and also aligning some of those policies that consider issues to do with immigration on Africa and all that. Thank you so much.
Takes there too. Cyril, what's your take on the candidates' agenda?
Yes, please. I think that the very default from every African here is immigration, right? But then I am more focused on, the investments in Africa, monetary investments actually in African countries. I think that the next president should be stricter on accountability from the leaders, because when you come to this side of the world, a lot of people complain about economic mismanagement because you have the money. We've seen people give you the money. We've seen $55 billion coming to Africa. I don't know how much is going to come to Ghana though, but then you would find that a lot of youth complain about leaders and their mismanagement of money or of resources, because you find them not really catering for the very basic and important things that the people need. The money goes into things that a lot of people find quite unnecessary, looking at our current situation in Ghana or in Africa right now. So I would want the next president to be very hard on accountability in their policy, so that, of course, we can never have enough money, or we can never have enough support from other people, because once there's enough, we become equal. And obviously, we are trying, but we can't all be at the same place. So once it's help that is coming, it can never be enough. So we have to be very economical and prudent with how we manage the resources that we get from countries like the USA.
Sophia, your take on the candidates' agenda?
I wish that both Kamala and Trump, whoever wins, will focus more on Africa's economy. In terms of youth, you can see that we have the largest youth. That's 60% of our population is really less than 25 years. So basically, they should focus on creating employment opportunities. Yes, employment opportunities in Africa. Not necessarily there, but I think when there are opportunities here in Africa, most of the Africans won't think of fleeing, because job here is the main issue bothering the youth. And then, yes, apart from that, we need also empowerment, like the Young African Leadership Initiative and Mandela Washington Fellowship, those kind of initiatives to actually empower the youth and make them feel like Africa is also a place where they can make it.
In the last US-Africa Leaders Summit, the Biden-Harris administration made a commitment of $55 billion investment in Africa. Previously, the Trump administration launched the Prosper Africa, an initiative to support and strengthen business relations between the US and African countries and improve the business climate. The US invests in Africa in many ways. Do you think it's enough? And what should be done to strengthen the US-Africa relations? I'm gonna start with Sophia, because she was the one having the mic before. Sophia, should we, US do more? Are those initiatives enough? You were just mentioning the Young African Leaders Mandela Washington Fellow. What else do you think that US should do more to create this better environment of business and development in the African continent?
Well, basically, I don't think they are enough. They are really less. But the ones that are available are actually doing well, but they can do better, like taking in more people. Let's say, for instance, like the YADI can take in more people from Africa to train them in leadership and other aspects. And then also, they can also support growing business, growing entrepreneurs, because here in Ghana especially, you can see that the youth is rising in entrepreneurship. Yes, instead of focusing on jobs, they are really focused on creating their own businesses and expanding them. So I think the US should focus on those upcoming who are supporting themselves and others as well. Because most of these people that are supporting themselves are also trying to support others in their country and even other countries. So I think they should support them to support each other. And then also not just supporting them to support, they should really invest in them so that they get, should I say, a larger scope of resources to empower others to also join.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And this was a great conversation with Curtis Matiti, Raul Barata, Sapia Mohammed Iklil, Helen Malechi, Cyril Sena, and Hope Nyambo. I thank you. Thank you so much for joining us.
In times of change, when the world seems uncertain and what we hear doesn't reflect what we see, we seek the truth. When we are told only part of the story, we lose trust. In moments of crisis, our dreams, hopes, and wishes for a better tomorrow depends on a free press. At Voice of America, we bring you the stories that people take risks to see. We connect the world and unite it with truth. At Voice of America, we show you the whole picture.